Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be doing my June reading wrap up, and I am filming this a little bit prematurely to the end of the month, so I do have a couple of books that I haven't finished yet that I'm currently reading, which I'll talk about in a moment. It dawned on me when I came in to my library to sit down and film this video that I think I was wearing this in the last video that I filmed. It is clean. I am a clean person. I wash my clothes regularly, but just happened to be sod's law. This is what I put on this morning. I am also contemplating doing a separate video kind of wrapping up my whatever-thon, readathon that I've been partaking in throughout the month of June when June is actually done, and kind of giving you a breakdown of each book that I read, what prompts they fulfilled, how many points that gained me, and kind of doing a bit more of a whatever-thon focused video. Obviously it will be a little bit repetitive because I'm going to be talking about the same books, but I'm going to be going into more depth. I think if I do it all in one video, it's going to be too much information, and yeah, just going to kind of be an information overload. And I haven't actually finished two of the books, so I don't want to make an assumption today that I'm going to finish what I've got on the go. So what have I got on the go at the moment? I am currently reading physically The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This is a collection of 5 short stories from the Throne of Glass world, and these are set prior to Throne of Glass itself in the timeline. I am currently 162 pages through this. I'm on the 3rd out of 5 stories, and the first 2 were kind of a little bit shorter, and the last 3 are kind of about 100 pages each. I've not got too much left of the second story, and then I literally have a couple of 100 pages left. This has been quite nice to read because Air of Fire was a little bit, it wasn't slow, but it was a little bit kind of like a little bit more disjointed. We're starting to kind of spread out into the world and have more perspectives, and we've got characters in different places, and it was quite nice to go back to this and kind of have a bit of a refresh and a like, oh, you know, kind of like reviving my interest in the series again. We're reading it for the Daisy and Bee series read along, and we're reading Throne of Glass for that. And we were kind of like, everywhere that we looked when we were looking for a kind of order to read them in, this always came up after Air of Fire, the 3rd book in the series, because of some of the content in this apparently means more or makes more sense as you've read the first 3, which I think I'm starting to see now in this 3rd story in the collection. I'm enjoying it so far, and I'm hoping, like I say, to finish this. It's the 26th as I'm filming, Sunday the 26th, so I've still got today, and then I've got several days, like 3 days, so I'm hoping that this won't be a problem at all to get that finished. And then I am also reading Sorcery of Thorns, but I'm listening to this on audio and doing some kind of reading along at points. So I'm hoping that I can get through this and have this finished as well by the end of the month, because this fulfills very quite nicely a prompt with the first letter and the last letter being the same. I've also had this on my TBR for far too long. I'm currently on page 260. I think have about 200 pages left, but it's nice to be over the halfway mark. And the audiobooks have got just over 3.5 hours, I think, or around 3.5 hours. So I'm hoping this won't be a problem at all to get this finished by the end of the month. But I'm enjoying both of these so far, and I'm looking forward to getting them read before the end of the month. So those are the ones I've got currently on the go. The month feels like it has gone really quick, but then when I started getting the pile together for this video, I was like, oh, hang on a minute, did I seriously read this at the beginning of June? This was the first book that I finished in June, so in some respects the month feels like it's been really, really quick, but it's been long at the same time. I was like, was this only a month ago? I read first in June Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. I picked this up not knowing an awful lot about it. I think Daisy read it, and I think it was also on a really good deal on Amazon, like £2 or £3, and I was like, it seems silly not to pick it up. I wasn't necessarily anticipating picking this up and reading it as quickly as I did. I thought I'd kind of purchased it because I had my kind of hyped romance book section of my TBR was getting very, very, very small and almost non-existent, and I thought, oh, I'll buy this as it's a couple of pounds, put this on my TBR, and then I ended up actually picking it up and reading it without really anticipating to, but I really enjoyed it. Josh and Hazel kind of initially meet at university, but they're not, wouldn't class them as friends. They are more kind of just like acquaintances at university. Hazel's always had a kind of a little bit of a thing for Josh and had a bit of a crush on Josh. We kind of fast forward several years. Hazel is quite a eccentric character. She's really kind of funny and out there and kind of says it how it is and doesn't have much of a filter. And she's got like her own little sort of like menagerie at home. She's got various different animals that she looks after, and she's just a really kind of like interesting character. And she's just a lovely character, such a lovely character. And she is her best friend, who she works with, actually happens to be Josh's sister, but she doesn't know that. She then meets Josh at a kind of like party, barbecue sort of event, and she's like, oh my gosh, you're Josh Im, like we went to university together. And they kind of like, they're just friends, and they kind of have this whole sort of like escapades, trying to go on double dates together, both trying to find someone for the other person. And I just really enjoyed this. It was really light and fluffy. It was just what I needed, but it had enough kind of like substance to it. And I've enjoyed everything I've read by Christina Lauren, so whenever I see one of their books now on offer, or you know, even in a charity shop or something like that, I think I'll definitely pick them up, because everything I've read has just been really enjoyable. The second book I read in June was, and I had to Google how to actually say this properly because I'd heard it said about 3 different ways. A Man Called Uva. Apparently that is the way that you're supposed to say it. That's the like official Swedish way of saying it. I've heard it called lots of different things. This was actually very kindly gifted to me by Lorna from Book Lover Lorna for my birthday, so thank you, Lorna. I recommended this. I put this forward as a suggestion for one of the in-person local book clubs that I go to, and it got picked. So I actually hosted the whole sort of like discussion. I created and put together some questions and discussion points, and it was actually really good fun. I really loved this book. It kind of gave me all the feels, which when we were discussing it in book club, one of the ladies said, how young are you? And I was like, it gave me all the feels. We had a bit of a laugh about that. Uva is a man that's very kind of grumpy and set in his ways. He's got a very regimented routine. He has kind of like a daily routine, and if he doesn't stick to that, it's like, oh, all hell breaks loose. But Uva's also a very lonely character, and his life kind of gets turned around when a family arrive and move into a house in the kind of residential area where he lives in, and they can't even reverse a trailer. Like, you shouldn't be driving with a trailer if you can't reverse one. And it kind of like all sort of like goes on from there. It's really interesting. We get kind of interspersed throughout the narrative, we get some sort of like retrospective chapters about his childhood and his relationship with his father, and then when he meets his wife, and kind of all the trials and tribulations he's kind of gone through. And he's just an amazing guy, and I'm really intrigued to read more by Fredrik Backman. And it's my turn to choose at my other book club, not the book club I've read this for. It's my turn to choose 3 books for the whole group to choose from for that. And I've actually put another Fredrik Backman title on that list, Beartown, because I've heard so much about it, and I'm really intrigued to read more from this author. And this was just, it made me laugh, it made me cry, and it just kind of like really got me, and I really loved it for that. So yeah, highly recommend if you haven't read it already. The next book that I read has been kind of ongoing for a while, and that's Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone by Diana Gabaldon. I kind of feel like when I first finished this, I was like, I can't talk about it straight away. I feel like I need some time to kind of process what I've read. I'm not sure how I feel about this book, and I don't know if it's down to me and how I read it, because I read it quite slowly, and I have counted it towards Whateverthon because I did have still a big chunk of it left going into this month. I think I had about 300 pages of it left, and I thought, well, yes, okay, it's a massive behemoth, 888 pages, but it's still a massive chunk of it left. So I kind of felt like, actually, I am going to count it towards Whateverthon prompt. I feel like I said, I feel like this needs its whole own video. I enjoyed it and I really loved it, and it was everything that kind of like I love about Outlander, but I don't know if because I read it so slowly and took so long to read it that it felt like almost a chore at the end, towards the end. Something also happened at the end, which is massive spoiler, so I won't mention it, but that kind of like, I feel like resolved itself too easily, and I was a little bit kind of like, I had my heart pulled out in one moment and then kind of put back in and patched together the next, and I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about it. So yeah, I feel like I need more time to really process this, probably do like a whole discussion video on it if anyone's interested, and then I think I might even wait until we get the next book, however bloody long that's going to be, before kind of really forming my full thoughts on the series as a whole. I feel like the first 3 books really stand out to me as like ultimate favourite books, but I feel like from that point on the series kind of like is not quite as enjoyable for me. I still love it. I'm still a massive advocate for the series, and I still recommend Outlander to lots of people. But I'm intrigued to see where it's going to go. And I just feel like so much yet so little happened in this. I don't know. It's difficult, and I think it's difficult when it's such a massive series and it's so involved. We've got so many characters we're trying to tie up. We've got so many plot lines running through that I think it's trying to do too much. And I might feel better having read the 10th book, because that might kind of like tie everything in a little bit better, and I don't know. We'll see. I still really enjoyed it. It just was at the end became quite a hard slog. So yeah. But glad that I've got it read finally, because I was really anticipating the release of this, and now I don't have to try and avoid spoilers. It's been on my shelf since November, and I was highly anticipating the release. I feel like I'm glad I haven't let it get like to a year later and I still haven't finished it. So I'm glad I've got that done. And yeah. The next book that I picked up was Book Lovers by Emily Lauren. Complete contrast to Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone. I really enjoyed this. I don't know if it's my favourite Emily Lauren book I've read so far. I've read Beach Read. I haven't read You and Me on Vacation. I've got that on my Kindle. I might pick that up at some point. But this one was a little bit more, I don't know. I enjoyed it. It's not the best romance I've ever read. But I kind of feel a little bit like the romance came out of nowhere a little bit. But it was still enjoyable, and it was an easy, quick read. And I did become invested in the characters and kind of like their bigger journeys as such. So yeah, I did enjoy it. Not the best book I've ever read, but did its job, lightened the load after Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone. And I'm definitely still going to give Emily Henry another go with, You and Me on Vacation, see what I think of that one as well. But yes, enjoyed it. The next book I read was King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard, and I don't even know where to start with this book. This whole series has had, in my opinion, so much potential and has just fallen flat at almost every hurdle for me. I enjoyed Red Queen, and I thought it was a good start to the series. But then these next 2 books, what was the previous book called? I don't know, and I haven't got it anywhere near me. Glass Sword and King's Cage. I feel like the bits that needed padding out more weren't padded out enough, and they were just like over and done with before you've even had a chance to really think about them. And the bits that weren't really that interesting were the bits that were padded out, and you're like, okay, well, why have we got padding here? We don't need it here. We want more in depth about some of the other stuff. It's not a small book, it's a chunk. It's, how many pages is it? Over 500 pages, and it just was not gripping me at all. And I think the only reason I got through this was because I downloaded the audiobook. I was probably about half the way through. I don't normally like doing that because I feel like it's a waste of a credit. But I was just like, I need to get this read, and I think the only way of doing it is literally just putting the audiobook on and forcing myself to read it. It's had so much potential, and this book started this having extra perspectives, not just having the main character Mare's perspective. So I'm sorry if that's spoilers, but you kind of get other perspectives drawn in here. But it was still I didn't feel weighted very well, and I feel like that could have been done better. I feel like I wanted so much more from this, and if it wasn't for the fact that it was just a 4-book series, I probably would have just DNF'd this, in all honesty. But because it was a 4-book series, and I was like, this is the 3rd book, come on, you can do it, Sophie, finish it, and then you've just got one more book, and then you're done with the series, and then you've seen the series out as a whole. If the 4th book, which I downloaded for like 99p on Kindle, so it's not cost me an awful lot of money, and the whole series hasn't cost me a lot of money because I've bought them, most of them are all secondhand, and I think the first one I actually got gifted by Daisy, so it's not really cost me much in the grand scheme of things. If the 4th book is as dull and as kind of like disappointing, I haven't lost too much because, like I said, it was 99p on Kindle, but I think I might DNF because I spent so long reading this book. So long reading this book, and at the same time I'd kind of started Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, which was another book club in person real life book club, and I had that on the go on the Kindle, and like every trick and turn I had to put that down because I was like, shoot, I need to get this read, otherwise I'm not going to get it read in time for the live show, for the discussion session. And every time I picked it up, I was like, I'd rather be reading it, Little Fires Everywhere, I'd rather be reading something else. And I think when that's the way you're feeling about a book, it's not gripping you enough. And like I said, if it wasn't for the fact that I was doing a series read along, that it was the 3rd book in a series and it's only got one more book, I might have actually DNF'd it. If this was like as long as Throne of Glass, like however many books Throne of Glass is, like, is it 7 or 8? I think 3rd book being this dull, I'd have just DNF'd and not given it much of a chance, because more of a chance. But I'm going to give the next one a go. Don't even know what it's called, the next book, but gonna give it a go, gonna give it a shot and see where it goes. And I'm a little bit intrigued to see how it ends, but I just feel really disappointed from this series. And with that being said, I'm sure lots of people will enjoy it, and do enjoy it, but it's just obviously not quite right for me. So then the next book that I did actually finish was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Like I said, I put it down to get this done in time for the discussion session, but then picked it back up again. I was reading it on Kindle, and I was reading it, like I said, for in-person book club. I really enjoyed Little Fires Everywhere. I thought it was a really interesting kind of concept, lots and lots of important messages. It's about a town called Shaker Heights in the States, and Shaker Heights is kind of like this ideal community, and there's lots of strict rules, and there's lots of things in place to ensure that it looks good. You know, you can only paint your houses certain colours, or houses can only be built in certain designs. The trash, their rubbish gets left, and they're all designed so that the rubbish is never out on in front of the houses. It's kind of left behind the houses, and the dust carts collect the rubbish from behind all the houses rather than out the front, so that there's never any like dirty stuff on the pavements. And this is very kind of like sort of like understanding that there's like ways that things are done, and it's got lots of little sort of stories. It's not a massively long book, but it's got kind of lots of little stories feeding off of it. And the main kind of thing is about Mia and her daughter Pearl. They come to the area, they come in a car, and their worldly possessions are in the car, so they're kind of not necessarily the normal occupants of Shaker Heights, and they rent a kind of like a upstairs area of a house, like an apartment, of a house that's owned by kind of another sort of main character, Elena Richardson, and she has a husband, and she's got 3 children. She's got a big beautiful house, and she owns this house that she rents out, this 2 apartments that she rents out, and kind of like she wants to do good deeds by renting it out. So she often rents them out at cheap rates, and for people that are going to be really deserving of the space. And it's kind of about all of their connections, and how everything kind of starts, their lives kind of start merging. And it was really interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And again, I am definitely going to be looking at more of Celeste Ng's work and adding it to my TBR for sure, because I really enjoyed it, absolutely flew through it. It was all I wanted to be reading when I was reading this, and it was such an easy read, but it wasn't, content-wise, it wasn't necessarily always easy, but it physically read easy, and it was it had a really nice flow to it as well, the prose, and it just kind of, again, was really interesting. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the bigger messages as well behind it. And then the final book that I'm going to talk about is Death Note. Death Note 3. These are the black editions, which I think I've mentioned before. I'm actually struggling to get hold of these to finish off the collection. This is actually then volumes. These volumes have been mashed together, so this is actually volumes 5 and 6 in this bind up that they've done. I haven't read the first 2 volumes for absolutely ages. I read them ages ago, and I hadn't picked up this in a long time. So I don't know if kind of like my slight lack of enjoyment is because I'm just a little bit like not in the story. Once I got into this, I was into it and I was enjoying it. It is a manga, for anyone that doesn't know. Death Note is about Light Yagami, and he comes into contact with a death note, which is a notebook where he writes someone's name in it and they die. And it's kind of like all of the after effects of that. And yeah, this is just it's just got a bit weird, and a bit kind of like convoluted, and I don't know if I am gonna carry on with this manga series now. Like I say, I'm struggling to get hold of the black editions to match, and I'd want editions to match. And I'm just wasn't completely gripped by this one. I don't think enough to carry on reading it, and I think if I was to buy any of the other editions, they probably would sit on my shelf unread for as long as this has been sat on my shelf unread. So I think I'm just gonna park it for now. If I see any good deals of these, if I see anything in charity shops or used book sales or anything like that, then I might pick them up to finish the collection. But for now, I think I'm gonna leave Death Note where it is. I think yeah, it's not at the forefront of my desire to pick it up and finish it, but it was enjoyable. It was really enjoyable to read a manga again, and it was also enjoyable to read something that's a little bit different from what I normally read. Like, the content of this is very different to what I normally read. So yeah, overall I enjoyed it, but it was a little odd to get into. Probably should have had a recap of the first 4 volumes before going into this one, and I didn't. But I also haven't read a manga in ages, so I was a little bit rusty, but a little bit of a mix up for my reading as well. You know, it's always nice to read something a little bit different, and I did enjoy it, but just it's not probably the manga that I would choose anymore. I probably would choose more slice of life, kind of contemporary manga going forward now. But yeah, I did enjoy it nonetheless. So those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 physical books that I read, and the 2 books that I still have on the go. Have you read any of these books, or have you got any of these on your TBR? If so, I would love to hear about them down below, and also would love to hear about any books that you read in June that you really enjoyed, or anything that you read that maybe wasn't quite what you were expecting. Would love to hear about them down below in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!